Hey, what's good, cannabis investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan, and today we're coming at you with This Week in Cannabis News from September 9th to the 15th. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learn something, please just leave a like on it, as it really helps out my channel. And of course, you can subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos. Now, try to think of these videos as a time capsule. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the US cannabis industry. Identify top US MSOs that you keep seeing pop up that you think will be worth more in the future than they are now, based on their current market caps and new markets coming online for adult use sales, and take advantage whenever you feel ready. But hey, move over July, because apparently we've got a bunch of states setting records in August, so we love to see it as adult use in Missouri hits new high. Legal sales reached 126.15 million in August 2024, an increase of 2.07% over July sales of 123.59. And we're not going to complain. Typically, July is the biggest sales month of the summer, but if people want to keep spending, just shows they want to vote for legal cannabis with their dollars, as this growth added an additional 2.56 million to Missouri's retail, bringing their cumulative sales to more than 2.9 billion since the market's inception. So almost at that 3 billion mark. And this past month was 111 million in adult use, and then 15.15 million in medical as well. So a few different views of looking at the data down here and breakdowns, but main thing to highlight, overall total combined sales have grown by 10.26% this year. The hottest market in the country shows no sign of slowing, as Michigan cannabis sales rise to record 295 million, which is up 2.7% from what we all expected to be the record-breaking month of July, and it's still 6.9% up from last year. So a new record level. Weren't expecting it, but Americans want to vote for legal cannabis with their dollars, especially when adult use is accessible, because it's the same medicinal plant that you would get out of a medicinal dispensary. That's why in every state we see this trend. It's likely cheaper to just go adult use as well at that point. Well, product breakdown, if you're interested in how that was divvied up, but most important thing is, when you provide equal access to opportunity, you provide competition, hence the price goes down for consumers, making them trigger happy to spend record amounts on legal cannabis. But crazy thing to note, Michigan cannabis sales expanded 82.1% in 2021, and then 27.9% in 2022, and 33.3% to 3.06 billion in 2023, and so far in 2024 has grown by 11.4%. To put this into context, they're hitting close to Canadian numbers, because obviously this is in USD compared to what Canada does, mid 400 million Canadian dollars, with 1/4 of the population, as Michigan has like 10 to 12 million people. So incredible. And with that, from Maryland, as they launched adult use July 2023, so year-to-date sales 755 million cumulatively. They did have a record-setting July, doing 70 million in adult use and 97.9 million combined for med and adult use. The good news is the spending didn't stop into August, and other states surprising us, hitting 73 million for adult use and then breaking the 100 million mark for combined med and adult use sales. And so Maryland's been on fire since launching July of 2023. I have no doubt this will continue, so we love to see it, and hopefully they continue to open more stores. All the links will be in the comments. But with that, from Maine, chugging along and setting records as well for August 2024, doing 23.9 million in total sales. So another small state, but happy to see them obviously expanding their program. And while we did see a record in July of 2024 for them, with 6 million in concentrates, 3.6 million in infused products, and then 13.2 million in basically flower. August did see a jump up from that, 6.3 million in concentrates, 3.7 million in infused products, and then 13.8 million in the flower that we all know and love. So full link in the comments if you want to go through those details for Maine. While from Cannabis Business Times, happy to report New Mexico and Montana continue breaking cannabis sales records among best performing markets in the nation. And so there wasn't a better time to be looking at this industry, especially for the next 12 months, 18 months ahead. I don't know when would be, but Montana's licensed cannabis retailers reported nearly 28.7 million in sales in August, a monthly record for the Treasure State according to data from the Department of Revenue. And this benchmark, which represents 7% growth over the previous August, comes in the second full year since Montana first launched adult use sales in January 2022. So we love to see that. While New Mexico's dispensaries reported more than 48.2 million in cannabis sales in August, representing a third consecutive monthly record for the Land of Enchantment, according to the data from the state's Regulation and Licensing Department. The new benchmark also represents 18% growth compared to the previous August. New Mexico launched adult use sales in April of 2022. So a few smaller states continuing to do big things for the people there and provide a safer access to a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative as well. And even New York is making strides, slowly but surely. So happy to report Cannabis highlighting that August sales of 97.8 million, a new monthly record, significant jump from the 68.8 million sold in July, and the 71.4 million sold in June. So technically another record-setting month, even though they're way behind where they could be. So New York quietly rises to a 1.17 billion annual run rate based on August results. Very much an unexpected growth story for 2024. And this comes from an article on the latest from New York. So that link will be in the comments if you want to go through that, but I figured this was the gist of it, worth sharing. But great question from Ziggy. What's your expectation on the annual run rate 12 months from now? And Can Investments shares his thoughts. Of course, take it with a grain of salt, but you can pause to read. Well, last one from Connecticut. Happy to report another state setting another record as people want to vote for legal cannabis with their dollars in August, almost reaching the $18 million mark. And while July last month did not set the record, it was just short of what they did in December of last year, which December is typically the record-setting month of the year as people spend lots and prepare for the holidays and get festive. But all that to point out is that we weren't expecting this, but we're happy to see that up from July, and we will look forward into September to see if any trends like that continue. All the links will be in the comments. The biggest announcement we got this past week, and thank you, Trump, for keeping your word on this, because it's way more than the Dems have done in the last 4 years. And essentially, he followed up on his first endorsement of the Amendment 3 adult use legalization initiative in Florida, and he added more context, highlighting that not only will he vote yes, and thank you, Julie Sirkin from NBC News for getting this in front of more eyeballs, but he also endorses research to unlock the medical uses of cannabis to a Schedule III drug, so he's not going to stand in the way of the rescheduling process, most likely. Hopefully his AG pick won't either, and as POTUS would work with Congress to pass common sense laws. And he even speaks of that bill, which we no longer speak of because it's been used as a carrot to dangle in front of us for so long, we're all traumatized. But all that to point out, when we needed it most, he did pull through for us. And so Forbes even highlighting, it's unfortunately behind a paywall, but to see a title or a headline like this in Forbes, Trump backs federal cannabis rescheduling and cannabis banking bill. Shit, like that's a dream headline for us all. And while CNN didn't cover it as clearly, just saying that he will vote to legalize adult rec cannabis use in Florida, they did fortunately at least add the details that he is in support of rescheduling to Schedule 3 and will likely pass the common sense laws that the Dems have, paid lip service to all their voters about, but have not actually done any action, despite Schmuck having the votes to pass the Safe Banking Act for the last 2 years. He's had the votes, he's just chosen not to. And if anything, we need as much support out of Florida as possible, and happy to show from Joe Greisler, as apparently Florida young Republicans don't have their heads stuck up their asses like the old Republicans and endorse Amendment 3. So clearly, it's the right thing to do, and this bullshit prohibition once and for all. So very happy to report that Florida, more and more people seem to be coming around, because November can change everything if the will of the people wins out, not only in the election, but especially in Florida. And so with that, thanks Todd Harrison for sharing what V8 Cap has to say on U.S. cannabis. So of course, take this with a grain of salt, but they make a few good points here. We believe that rescheduling and banking reform were hardly priced into MSO evaluations prior to Trump's statement. I would agree. And we see valuation upside in the near term to recent rescheduling related peaks of 10x, and longer term to comparable industries at 10x to 16x when key issues like 280E and banking capital markets are addressed. This is the biggest factor, of course. Now, it didn't seem to matter in 2021, but going forward, I don't see us getting to new all-time highs without uplisting being a factor, just simply because we've been lied to for so long and misled by politicians. And many of us have bags, many of us have started new positions, and many of us don't need the money so we can hang around because we have jobs and whatnot, right? But sadly, that is a reality I've sort of just accepted. I'd love to be wrong and pleasantly surprised, but one thing that we could see in the near future, but I'm not holding my breath for, is of course a new Garland memo. And while I'd love for Do the Right Thing to be right, I don't necessarily think he will be, though he thinks, based on this letter from February 2nd, 2024, written to Merrick Garland from lawmakers citing the situation of illicit cannabis apparently run by Chinese nationals at this point in time. Then March 14th, 2024, we get this response in ProPublica as the Department of Justice is working on developing a cannabis enforcement policy that will be consistent with federal guidance related to state legalization initiatives. And so does that mean we'll get a Garland memo? I don't know. Apparently he's out though, Jan 2025. So regardless of the results, it'd be in their best interest to act sooner than later. And for whatever reason though, people keep calling Garland based. As much as I want this, I don't think it's coming, because Garland is the least based man. Not only did he weaponize the DOJ against parents a few years back that didn't want their kids to be taught about transgender issues in elementary school, which is totally fair, I do believe he also has a family member that is a big proponent of selling DEI courses throughout schools, and that's just the opposite of based. It's the least based you can be. So let's hope I'm wrong, and let's hope he does pull this political chess move out just in time. This is a bit of a blast from the past if you've been holding bags like I have since 2021. All that to point out that while these can provide good perspective sometimes, it's not always best to listen to them or politicians, mainly because at this point in time, January 29th, 2021, these were the prices in USD for these MSOs that are now making way more revenue, have way more stores open, but are trading at way lower valuations than at this point in time. And so why many of us are holding the bags that we were holding? Again, when we were 2 weeks out of all-time highs, what's coming next as the Dems flip the Senate and Schmuck is making comments saying that, of course, they're going to move forward and keep their campaign promise as well. Could remove 280E penalty, potentially increasing free cash flow by 2x to 5x. We still haven't gotten there yet, but we're on the cusp. As if rescheduling does finalize by 2025, that will be gone, hopefully. A when, not if scenario, we've been told. But then likely removes regulatory arbitrage, providing pathway for large re-rating. And so this is the talk of uplisting from the CSE and the OTC to U.S. major exchanges. Hence, we believe this could provide a pathway for significant re-rating of cannabis operator valuations, which, or as we've previously discussed, could be as high as 20x from early January 2021 levels. And I mean, silly enough for any of us to think that could have actually happened, but the fact that these companies were valued at so much higher when they were making way less, and now they're valued at so little when they're making way more, it's hard to believe that the balance is not going to switch back. Makes a good comment down here. Not going to happen, most likely, but it's not like we've never seen the market be outrageously unrational before with stocks like Nikola, Nvidia, and other things like that. So who ultimately knows once we get the handcuffs off? I'm excited. Obviously, I've bought my ticket for that day. Hope you have too. Just don't bet the house on it if you can't afford to lose it. But with that, an updated one from ATB. So thank you, Sammy J, for sharing so I could share with all you. They're pretty connected to the pulse of the remaining institutional investor interest in the sector, and they just put out their annual survey. And so from the 22, I believe, investment analysts surveyed, maybe it's institutions, I'm not sure, uplisting was the top factor that would increase willingness to allocate more capital. And honestly, I think Trump is the closest thing we have to uplisting than really any other thing going on in the background. So I, again, could be wrong. Let me know what you think in the comments. But for what ATB has to say on everything, highlights softened sentiment on MSOs, waiting for uplisting and rescheduling. Of course, rescheduling expectations. Florida spillover, going to be a massive factor. And then I don't think anyone's really waiting for this, but it will be helpful for the LPs awaiting excise tax reform in Canada and hopefully some more developments out of Europe and Germany. A commercial market would be fantastic. And so moving along though, folks, with that, I just wanted to share this one from Sherrod Brown as he was sharing a video of him stopping by a cannabis company in Ohio. Leads you to believe, hey, are the Dems going to pivot back to cannabis because many of them are in desperate need to get reelected? It would seem to be the case because September 13th, sure enough, 5:35 p.m., we see Sherrod going to help out cannabis workers, but not actually passing the legislation like safe banking that would really, help a lot less of them die and allow them to open bank accounts and be treated like any other American, and the discrimination already. So will the Dems kind of shift their tone this week? Another indicator that they might for Marijuana Moment, as Senate committee will vote on Doobie Act to block agencies from using past cannabis use to deny employment and security clearances. And so no doubt, look out for federal workers before you look out for any of the small fish working for the cannabis companies, of course. But it's progress, I would say, as apparently a Senate committee has rescheduled a hearing for next week to vote on a bill that would limit the ability of federal agencies to discriminate against people for past cannabis use. So I'll update you if this gets passed, but hopefully this is the first of a few dominoes that we've likely needed, and obviously dominoes that will help America for the better. Massive public health victories when we get cannabis out of the bullshit prohibition status. But with that, happy to get onto some studies from AARP. This one shares that 1 in 5 older adults use cannabis. As AARP-supported research shows, many people 50 plus are trying THC and CBD most likely to aid their health. So 1 in 5 people, at least once in the last year, a report from University of Michigan finds that's up from 1 in 8 in 2025, and in 2015 to 2016, roughly 3% of adults finding a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative to actually be something that they might have needed or wanted all along. And so, of course, more here if you wanted to pause to read, but main thing, why older adults choose to use cannabis. I'm sure there's many reasons, but the most important ones, at least for them, and I imagine it helps getting older be a little bit easier. All the links in the comments. Well, we got this one from the Wiley Online Library with fascinating findings, and it's another COVID one. Antiviral effect of cannabidiol on K18HACE2 transgenic mice infected with SARS-CoV-2 from September 12, 2024. So the aim of the study was to determine the antiviral activity of CBD against SARS-CoV-2. The study was designed with 2 groups. There was a treatment group given SARS-CoV-2 and then CBD, and then a control group given SARS-CoV-2 and then nothing else. Get this. Well, the disease progressed and resulted in death in the control group that was infected by the virus alone. What? It was observed that the infection slowed down and the survival rate increased in the mice treated with CBD along with the virus. Riddle me that. So fascinating findings, hence why cannabis ought to have been descheduled decades ago. We've got this one from the Journal of Cannabis Research as of September 11th, pretty fresh off the press. Changes in health-related quality of life over the first 3 months of medical cannabis use. And the results speak for themselves. Background and methods you can pause to read. Small sample size of 438 people out of Pennsylvania. But the results speak for themselves. Participants, 66.4% female, were most commonly referred for medical cannabis to treat anxiety disorders, 61.9%, or severe chronic or intractable pain, 53.6%. Participants reported rapid and significant improvements in all of the domains of quality of life from baseline to 3 months after initiating the medical cannabis use. Speaks for itself. Physical functioning, role limitations due to physical health problems, emotional well-being, role limitations due to emotional problems, bodily pain, social functioning, energy fatigue, and general health. And get this, age was negatively predictive of level of improvement over time for certain functions, with older participants displaying less improvements than younger. And so, of course, there's been a lot of talk saying that you should use cannabis when you're older and not when you're younger because your brain is yet to be developed. But these findings seem to kind of contradict that. I could be wrong. Let me know what you think in the comments. But I wasn't expecting that to be the case. So that's very interesting, at least in my eyes. Well, from eLife, we've got this one, a very technical one, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But from September 11th, cannabinoid combination targets Notch1 mutated T-cell acute lymphoblastic leukemia through the integrated stress response pathway. And so basically, they took 3 isolated cannabinoids from this chemovar that synergistically mimic the effect of the whole extract. So I don't know if they used actual ones or just something to mimic it, but essentially what they found, the treatment with these 3 isolated molecules resulted in reduced tumor size and weight in vivo and slowed leukemia progression in mice models. So of course, not in humans yet, but would likely do the same thing in any other mammal with an endocannabinoid system, am I right? So altogether, the study elucidated the mechanism of action of 3 distinct cannabinoids in modulating the Notch1 pathway and gives us reason to want to study a lot more of these chemicals, or compounds, I should say, not chemicals, and figure out how they would help medicinally in other ways too. Well, from MDPI, a bit of an older one from August 7th, but another one on Alzheimer's, comprehensive exploration of the multifaceted neuroprotective role of cannabinoids in Alzheimer's disease across a decade of research. And so all that to point out, surprisingly, some synthetic findings in here too, but not the THCO or any of the stuff that we're seeing really sold through the skunk gas station weed bullshit. All that to point out, Alzheimer's disease, we know, a very progressive neurodegenerative disorder that fucks with your brain. The majority of natural delta-9 THC and CBD, the most important ones, and synthetic cannabinoids showed promise in improving memory, cognition, and behavioral symptoms, potentially via pathways involving antioxidant effects of selective CB1R agonists and immunomodulatory effects of selective CB2R agonists. Main thing to point out, do you hear of any opioids or pharmaceutical drugs improving your memory, your cognition, your behavioral symptoms? No. If anything, sadly, most school shooters happen to be on SSRIs or some sort of pharmaceutical drug. Sadly. No one wants to talk about that, but that seems to be the fact and a trend throughout a lot of them. And so all that to point out, cannabis is medicine, baby. Should have been descheduled years ago. Full link in the comments. Well, last study we got, I believe, done by Tilray as well, from Herald Open Access, effectiveness of cannabinoids treatment in pain management and other fibromyalgia-associated symptoms, a case series. And so published as of May 13th, a bit older, but just got it from a press release from Tilray. Main thing from the abstract, pharmacological therapies for fibromyalgia are still ineffective in many patients, involving adverse effects that hinder their long-term use. We aim to assess the effectiveness of cannabinoids, Tilray, dried flower THC-18 in the management of chronic pain and other FM-associated symptoms according to patient-reported outcomes in a series of 3 FM patients, so just 3 patients. That's the sample size you can get when you actually study in humans. No wonder everything's still done in mice, which is fucking annoying. We observed improvements after 1 and 3 months of cannabinoid treatment in brief pain inventory, visual analog scale, insomnia severity index, SF36 health survey, and fibromyalgia impact questionnaire, allowing pain relief and improvements in sleep quality, performance of daily life activities, and quality of life. Results, again, speak for themselves. Of course, a lot more here if you wanted to grab the full link in the comments to go through that. But main thing, cannabis is medicine. We got to get it out of the jail that it never belonged to in the first place. And so on to MSO news. Green Thumb Industries refinance its senior debt via syndicated credit facility. So this is a big deal in the sense that we're seeing an MSO still with, 280 handcuffs tied behind their backs, illegal behind the Schedule 1 classification, closes a $150 million 5-year credit facility at an industry-leading interest rate of just 5%. We've never seen a cannabis company get that low of financing. And so, is this a new horizon for MSOs going forward? Do they all see the writing on the wall too, the financiers? Possibly. Utilize proceeds to retire existing senior secured debt due April 30th, 2025. While this oversubscribed non-brokered offering is a first of its kind of bank-only financing in the U.S. cannabis industry, apparently. So think about that. Up until now, for years, they've had to deal with third-party predatory lenders giving them rates above 10% because they can. And most of these companies, not all of them, but a lot of them, maybe 20 or so now, have survived through this all, despite having the handcuffs tied behind their backs for so long. And this precedent is huge when you consider Valley National Bank, a regional bank with over $62 billion in assets, and the principal subsidiary of Valley National Bancorp. And I imagine if this goes well with Greentham, they're going to be looking out at the rest of the MSOs that are still healthy and have survived this long despite having 280E. And once 280E is gone, likely in the next 12 months, I don't want to say 6 because nothing ever happens quickly, it's just going to be more profitable for them to want to work with more and more cannabis companies. So you love to see it. Of course, pause to read if you're interested, or you can grab the full link in the comments. While they continue to focus on what they can't control, and Greentham opens its 20th Florida location, Rise Dispensary Jacksonville, on September 13th. So more information here if you're interested, but happy to see Greentham getting up to 20 dispensaries, as of course, when they had 10, say like 3 to 6 months ago, people were wondering, are they going to try and take advantage of Florida? And surely they hurt us, at least behind the screens, it seems like. While Verano elevates Florida retail footprint to 79 dispensaries. Everyone wants to get in Florida because the odds are good and in our favor for November, with the openings of MOV Melbourne and MOV Okeechobee. What a great name. And so more details here if you wanted to pause to read, but that brings Verano's active operation to 14 states, 152 total dispensaries in those 14 states, with 15 cultivation and processing facilities and more than 1.1 million square feet of cultivation capacity. And of course, we noted in our last week's video, Verano did just give $1 million to the campaign as well. And so that gives them more ammunition to compete with against the anti-hemp lobby. More information here if you wanted to pause to read. Or not the anti-hemp lobby, the anti-legal lobby, or the hemp lobby, I should say. Fuckers. This one from Mike at Curated Value, so thank you for sharing this. And I don't know how he got this application, but I would love for him to answer this guy so we could know. But great find anyways. He was able to get the Air Wellness Virginia application. They plan to spend $18 million to build out their operations, funded with cash on hand that they already have. And then they expect $7.2 million of operating cash flow by year 2. So that's pretty promising for this new exclusive Air Virginia license that they got for whatever sector of Virginia. I know Verano has one for elsewhere. Cannabis had one that they sold it to Verano. And I believe Greentham has another area. All that to say, while this is great that they're going to be doing this, I don't know when construction officially starts to go into effect. So just wanted to point that out. And if these docs are real, which would be great, Virginia Pharmaceutical Processor Application 2024. Yeah, I wonder how we got this. Anyways, all that to point out, the information is here if you're interested. But it makes me very happy to see that as an Air Wellness shareholder. Good to see them planning ahead for the future. Well, the rest of the state news before we head off. New Jersey passes law to regulate and restrict the sale of intoxicating hemp-derived products. We needed this out of more states, and we're finally seeing it. Last week, it was the behemoth of California finally striking down to try and save their legal adult use industry. Now, New Jersey is getting a head start and trying to do the same. And so it's very dry, though. Not going to spend too much time going through it. But the main thing is, of course, if New Jersey wants the safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative to proliferate as opposed to the gas station bullshit, and they want to make sure this doesn't end up in the hands of kids, you need the legal market to have dispensaries that require ID up to 21 in order to buy, all that yada yada. It's what we already know. It's just good to see states taking action against the Farm Bill loophole crap that's been running rampant since that happened in 2018, unbeknownst to many of us for a long time. But main thing for New Jersey, if they want to offset the black market, and especially that gas station skunk weed, open more dispensaries. That is the ultimate precursor for success when you end cannabis prohibition. So lots of information in this one. My goodness, conclusion here if you wanted to pause to read. Otherwise, full links in the comments. While from Marijuana Moment, I'm just going to share this briefly because we've seen this time and time again from Pennsylvania. But, of course, since Ohio now just legalized, it seems Pennsylvania lawmakers like, fuck, we finally have to act on this. Bipartisan PA lawmakers file a new cannabis legalization bill as neighboring states see benefits of cannabis sales. And so, good for them to actually do this. About 2 months after circulating a memo with draft legislative language to build support for the proposal, it was formally introduced alongside 15 other co-sponsors on Friday. So likely, again, likely because of Ohio, it has forced them to want to capture their own tax dollars from this. So for more detail, I invite you to pause to read on essentially what the legislation includes. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because it's always subject to change until it becomes actual law. So happy to update you once this lands on the governor's desk and is once and for all finally law there. Well, out of Indiana, happy to see some progress as some Dem politicians, and I think it's the Indiana candidate for governor, introduced common sense cannabis plan. So this is huge for Indiana, one of the states that, again, sadly behind and does not provide a safer and non-addictive medicinal alternative for their citizens, and therefore have not felt the benefits of this public health victory. But the plan focuses on 5 key components to create a framework for the Hoosier state to transition to full adult use cannabis. By the end, the gubernatorial candidate's plan discusses the economic and social benefits the Hoosier state would receive by legalizing cannabis for medical use before transitioning to rec purposes for all eligible adults. And so, still very early, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but you can pause to read if you're interested hearing about what will happen in Indiana. Well, last few stories, again, another first, seeing the USC Trojans sign revolutionary partnership with CBD cannabis company Cookies, and I feel like they could have picked a much better company to partner with based on all the rumors you hear about Cookies and the potential lawsuits there. But great to see essentially college football start normalizing and partnering with cannabis company, essentially because cannabis is medicine. If we know anything at this point, it is far more productive, most likely, to treat your athletes with CBD and cannabis than it is for certain prescription pain medication. Not saying all of it, but I'm sure there's definitely wiggle room for CBD to come in and take a whole lot of market share of a lot of pills that athletes had been popping in the past for pain that just don't do what cannabis does. And so happy to report this is a big precedent as well in college sports, and hopefully we'll see more teams and other leagues follow through on this as well. While apparently Colombia's diverse environments grow cannabis with uncommon terpenes that can have unique therapeutic benefits, study shows. So that's pretty interesting. Now, the main reason I'm sharing this is because I just bought tickets to Colombia and I'm going for 2 weeks in December. So if you've ever been to Colombia, please let me know in the comments. Or if you happen to be from Colombia and you have access to a cannabis farm, I would love to visit. And so let me know in the comments. One thing I definitely would want to do on that trip, going to Bogota and Medellin. Anyways, new research on Colombian-grown cannabis reveals significant phytochemical diversity in the plants, uncovering what authors say are 4 distinct chemotypes based on cannabinoid profile, as well as plants that are rich in uncommon terpenes. And so, what do these uncommon terpenes lead to? I think we still have to do more research to find out what all that can mean. But interestingly enough, diversity in compounds produced by Colombian cannabis plants could benefit not only growers, for example, by increasing resistance to pests and other pathogens, curious how they do that, but also develop unique medical cannabis products, says the study published in the journal Phytochemical Analysis. So I'll try and find the study that they're pulling this from and pull that in the comments too. One factor is, of course, the varied environmental zones, because the country is home to snow-covered volcanoes, tropical beaches, deserts, grasslands, rainforest, and more. So many different things in one place. While the significant amount of usually uncommon terpenes suggests that Colombia's environments may have a unique capability that allow the plant to fully express these compounds as it grows. It's kind of a gay way of saying that, but whatever. I get it. Now, I don't think we necessarily know what all the terpenes do yet. I would love to get to that point. I think it's a bit further down. We observed that some inflorescences exhibited compact and densely structured forms, while others presented a more open and airy architecture. Is this when you take like a microscope and look at the plant closely? The color ranged from light and warm hues to dark and subdued shades. See, I don't get that deep into this stuff, so I don't necessarily care. But analyzing the compounds found in each sample, the 8-person research team divided the Colombian-grown cannabis into 4 different types: THC dominant, CBD dominant, CBG dominant, and balanced type. While different chemotypes weren't found exclusively in one region or another, the THC-dominant strains were widely distributed across the country, for example. So yeah, more details here if you wanted to pause to read. It's very nuanced, though, and really probably only interesting if you're kind of a science nerd. Either way, overall, some findings here. Well, you can pause to read if you're interested. I'll just bring it down to highlight the rest of this. It's a long article, lots of details, but I'll put that study in the next link, and that'll be in the comments so you can grab it. I doubt anyone watches my videos this far in. If you do, thank you. I love you. You're awesome, but I'm sure most people have dropped off by this point. After the sales, maybe after the studies, who knows. But yeah, I'll let you point out links in the comments. This is the study from Wiley Online Library, looking at what makes Colombia different for growing cannabis, at least once my fucking computer loads, because it's just what it does. Wiley Analytical Science from August 21st, 2024. Fairly new, so that's there for you if you're interested. And while they say time flies when you're having fun, it hasn't been so fun not getting financially rewarded in the last 4 years for our big bags, but at the same time, I have had fun, and I think I'm mentally richer and in a much better place than I would have been 4 years ago had I cashed out then. And so the future is bright, and why we got to plan ahead for the day that we do finally get rewarded, folks. And while it seems crazy that we're 8 weeks away from the election and share prices haven't budged, so when are we going to get rewarded? But again, you got to believe it's going to come at some point and plan accordingly for your own situation, as this is not advice. But early voting begins next week for some states. Just a reminder for all of you that Florida, South Dakota, North Dakota will vote on adult use cannabis. Arkansas will vote to expand its medical program. And Nebraska will vote to open a medical program. So a lot of firsts to come. A big one for Florida, of course, on the line. Just a fact that we've never had two presidential candidates that were outspokenly for cannabis reform in some way or another, and highlighting that likely neither of them will derail the rescheduling to Schedule 3 process. So things are looking good. My last question for all of you is, who do you think, if gets elected in November, would help the rescheduling to Schedule 3 process get done more quickly so that 280E removal and eventual uplisting becomes a reality sooner than later? Personally, I think it's Trump. Who do you think it would be? Let me know in the comments because I'd love to know. But that is it for today's episode. So I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos. And I will catch you next week for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.